We got David Daniel Gonzalez of Mystic-Skeptic Radio Show. What are we going to talk about, you're asking? Honestly, everything you have here that your show's about is everything I'm interested in. So, and you saw that in my post. I mean, when I was reaching out for guests, I said, give me mind control experts, UFOs, conspiracy theories, spirituality, religion, life coaches, hypnosis, all these kind of things that I've been fascinated by my entire life. And you were like, well, I know I study religious philosophy, but then I go to your Mystic-Skeptic Radio Show podcast, which is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. I know you have a Buzzsprout website, and the podcast sounds just like what I'm trying to go for with Open Loops, honestly. Exploration of all things mystical, philosophical, scientific, political, conspiratorial, and cosmic. So, with that said, here's what I was curious about. When anybody ever brings up that whenever anyone puts skeptic in their description next to anything mystical, that automatically makes me just think you're like 100% James Randi, Michael Shermer, like debunking, taking away the magic, taking away the, but you're still like looking at conspiracies and stuff. So I guess I wanted to start with philosophically, when you're doing a Mystic-Skeptic radio show, are you in the middle? Are you a skeptic? Are you a mystic? Where does your current philosophy, where does it lie?
Well, I was just thinking about it today because, I have a lot of friends who are very absolutist. So they'll tell you, this is the way, the right political perspective, or this is the right religious perspective, or this is the only source of answers. And we live in a postmodern world where even those ideas of having right and wrong have been already questioned and debunked. So in a sense, I am old school in that I want to find a source of truth, or I want to be able to measure truth. Kind of like the scientific movement started with the idea of like, I don't know if you ever heard this, but back in the day, they thought that birds came out of trees. Because if you observe nature, you would see that that's where they fly into. So people, just by observing nature, they say, well, that's how it is. And then they started testing it, and they found the eggs, and they realized that's where they nest and that's where they live. So in the same way, if someone tells you, well, I know that Bigfoot is real, and it's like, well, you can believe that, and that's good for you, but like, is there any evidence? And there's been thousands of shows that claim they have evidence. They claim they found him or the group of ape-like beings, and there's still no physical evidence other than some footprints here and there, or some hair. And there's a show where they went to Tibet and they found a head crest worn by a Tibetan monk. They claimed to have the Yeti hair, and the guy wouldn't let him test it on a DNA lab. So that is, you put it to the test. You try to find discernible truths based on the information available. There are some issues such as the existence of God, existence of aliens, that are very difficult to measure because, like in an experiment, you cannot recreate the event. And so it's up to someone's faith or someone's understanding of the universe for it to fit within that paradigm. But you still have to use our senses, and you have to use our ability to study and learn to assess if there's any credibility to these claims. And that's what I think that we are losing. When you listen to Coast to Coast, when you listen to Ancient Aliens, or any of these shows in the Gaia Network, they just give you a bunch of information that there is no verifiable sources. So people rant about their experiences or their theories, but all they show you is like a little image or some historical connection, but there's no way to go back and say, well, is it really doing that? And I think that type of poorly researched and poorly based ideas became popular in the height of the Da Vinci Code book, where he was making these weird associations that had no true history behind them. They were just very well written to make them seem like they did. And
Right.
and he even took the idea from someone else who was basing it on some mythological stories from France. So you can build a case for anything based on a lot of different things, but can you really bet your life on it? And I think that we're coming to the point where people believe things blindly. And so when you talk about religious philosophy, I always have a problem with cults. I always have problems with religions that are manipulative and who are trying to push ideas that are counterintuitive. And that's where the skeptic part comes from. But like you said, if you believe in magic, not in the sense of being able to make stuff come out of a hat, but in the glorious beauty of life and the ability for things to happen, positive things to happen or influence the world in a positive way, then skepticism actually leads you to a very dark place, because you feel that everybody's lying to you. Everybody is living a lie. So we have to be open. That's where the mystical component comes in. And you have to differentiate between being a mystic and being someone who's fantastical or myth-oriented. And that's something else that I try to discuss in my show, is that mythical thinking has actually created some of the most destructive groups in our history, because they are trying to generate this type of euphoria to support causes that are very evil. So we have to be mystical in the sense of open to spirituality, open to positive ideas, and at the same time be able to test those ideas to see if there's any benefit for humanity. Because you can believe anything you want, but the question is, how does it affect other people, and how does it affect you? And there's healthy and unhealthy forms of belief, and that's what the mystic and skeptic is supposed to do.
That's very interesting. Well, I'm wondering, because I really want to kind of break down what you said in the sense of, well, for instance, what was that? There was a book that Richard Dawkins came out with a couple years ago, and sort of Richard Dawkins, his whole thing beyond just the God delusion is that you can find the beauty. You can have a mystical experience through looking at the intricacies of science. And to me, it seems like you're not 100% materialist, but at the same time, I guess I'm wondering, David, like, is there anything, do you have any belief system that supports anything that someone might talk about on a paranormal radio show or supernatural? Like, is there anything in your wheelhouse that would make you, if you were like, yes, but I do believe that there is, I mean, I suppose God could even be that. Like, how weird does it get for like a mainstream audience talking to you for the first time and learning about everything you've thought in this world?
Well, I don't want to fall into parallelomania. That's another pet peeve of mine, where if you see something that is similar to something else, they must be connected, or everything is the same. So I had on my show two gentlemen who they think, or they say that they're UFO experts. One debunks UFOs because he thinks that there's not enough evidence, or it's not something that is tangible. And the other one thinks, they both believe the same thing, but they take different approaches. The other one says that UFOs are actually demons, and they're the satanic realm of the devil has come up with this scheme of trying to confuse people by representing themselves as aliens.
Interesting.
So people won't believe in God, and they won't believe in the demonic realm. So to secularize them, or to make them more New Age influence, they pretend to be these other beings that have nothing to do with God, nothing to do with spirituality. And that's how they confuse people. So me listening to that, it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense. Because that's when you start using logic. And it's like, why would the devil go through all that work And why would he, they say he's deceitful, but that's just silly. But if
Yeah.
someone says, I was asleep and this being appeared to me and it glowed, or it was a dark figure, then we can go into, okay, let's say that there is a spiritual realm, or let's say it's not spiritual in the sense of what we know, but let's say that it is another dimension, another place, and that being is manifesting themselves in our our discernible elements. Then you can interpret whatever that is happening based on your own beliefs. So someone might think they're an angel, someone might think that they're a devil, someone might think they're an alien, someone might think it's a hallucination. So the question is, did it happen to begin with? And if you use scientific knowledge, the biggest probability is that it never even happened, that the person ate something bad, and then they started having their mind started playing tricks on them. So for me, that is the baseline. We go to the natural explanation. But I had a mentor that told me that if you always dismiss people's spiritual or paranormal perspectives, you might miss out on something. So there's a fantastic podcast. It's actually a very sad story, but it's about women who have been killed and mistreated in Mexico and the border. And nobody could solve the crime. This crime has been going on for 20 years. Nobody could solve it. And one of the mothers of the victims, she would pray for her daughter to appear to her and give her a clue. And it turns out that in one of her dreams, the young lady appeared to her and told her who was the culprit. And it happened that it was the person that she named. Wow. So you can say that that's coincidence, that you can say it's wishful thinking, that the mom was already on the right track, and then her mind played tricks on her and led her to the right path. But what if God or the spirit system allowed for the mom to find comfort in her daughter, and for her daughter to give her that clue that it was so crucial that multiple reporters, FBI agents, Mexican investigators, nobody could put the puzzle together, but that one hint of information that was transferred to her from the other realm brought some closure to them. So to me, it's like, if you dismiss it, if you say it's just baloney, that people are crazy, they're superstitious, then you might not be able to even consider it. I am not a big supporter of psychics or things like that, because a lot of them take advantage of people and they tell them what they want to hear and things like that. And I only had one psychic or someone who was connected to that in my show. But to me, that's the thing. It's like, we have to have the ability to hear everybody out, and then challenge them, and then make an informed decision from what we have heard. So the premise of my show is, it's a little negative, but it's like, I give everyone enough rope to hang themselves in the sense of like, go ahead. But you don't want to become also a platform for people who are hateful or who are saying things that are destructive. So there are some guidelines for me. It's like, I don't feel comfortable just allowing someone to speak craziness, but there has to be at least a sensitivity that there are some very heartfelt beliefs that people have, and you can make sense of them. And a true, like, hardcore skeptic is not satisfied with I don't know or maybe. I am willing to work within that realm.
So would you say you've ever had any kind of paranormal or supernatural experience in your life?
Not per se, like nothing like super blunt and something that is quantifiable. But I've had different inklings or experiences that are, they fill you with warmth and they make you feel that your life has a purpose. So I also don't like self-help stuff because they kind of cheapen that experience. But there is this sense of like, it's interesting and it's kind of also emotionally overwhelming. The song they play in that podcast about the women of Juarez, it's a Spanish song, and it says, "I was born with a purpose." And it kind of connects how the women who are mostly dismissed as poor and they're immigrants within Mexico who are unknown and easily targets. The song says, "I was born for a reason. I was born for a purpose." So I think that it's easy when you become a true skeptic to think that it's just a monotonous existence, that everything is chaos, that there's no real reason that we're here. But I believe that we have the ability to create meaning and to create purpose. And then we have little senses of heading in the right path. And that can be an emotional thing or a crutch or whatever. But I think that it's something that empowers us to move forward and to keep doing good work.
Yeah, this is what I was wondering, because if you say that self-help often is a cheaper version of that self-actualization, what then, and I know you have some writings about religion, and religion is a topic that you've talked a lot about. You have a lot of episodes dedicated to the topic. What do you think, what would you, if someone was like, hey, David, I want to become self-actualized and I don't just want to go to a Tony Robbins seminar, how would you point that person even in the right direction if they just seem totally lost?
Well, and that's, I try to be unbiased and I try to be, as reasonable a person as possible on my show. But I also have like another part of who I am. And we're working on a show where we're going to discuss Christian hedonism. Have you ever heard of
that? No, I love hedonism. So yeah, please tell me.
Okay, so hedonism, the basic premise of it is that everything's about pleasure.
Yes.
And it makes sense. My dad used to say, life is all about sex, power, and money. And that's a Freudian thing. And what you see as a skeptic, what you see is that the whole history of humanity has been about that. So anybody that comes to you and says, no, it's all about love, it's all about kindness,
right,
justice, stuff like that, it's not, but we wish it would be different. So for me, if someone says, I want to grow as a person, I want to connect with a higher, like, I don't like the term higher power because it's too nebulous. But let's say that they want to be the best they can be. I wouldn't point them to self-help gurus or even spiritual self-help gurus like Joel Osteen or people like that, because they're giving them, again, a very, it's all about packaging and selling things that you cannot sell. You cannot, working in counseling, they always say that people cannot get out of an addiction, get out of a destructive relationship, hit rock bottom. And all these new age style philosophies never talk about that. Of course, people are wonderful. Of course, people were born pure and full of the ability to do great things, creativity and love and stuff like that. But until we come to terms with our own lack of interest in the well-being of others, with our own selfishness, we're never going to be able to get past it. So people say, well, if you deny your own selfishness, you're denying your humanity. So that would be the first way to destroy religion, because religion is usually about self-control, about feeling burdened by this lack of not being able to do everything you want. You're more responsible or more methodical. It's almost like a Boy Scouts manual where you have to follow the rules and stuff like that. In modern spirituality, it's all about the self and loving yourself and caring for yourself and giving yourself kudos and taps on the back or whatever, hugging yourself. You cannot get to that point of true self-love until you have just a little bit of self, like the word would be disappointment with yourself. Because if you're disappointed that you haven't been able to achieve the goal, then you can grow. Then you can look at it and work the problem. But if your mom tells you since you're a kid that you're wonderful and you're amazing and that every woman should fall in love with you and that you're the God's gift on earth, then you're a brat and you have nothing to give to other people. When you realize that you're flawed, when you realize that there's a lot of things you need to work on, then that's when you can start the true process of self growth. When you start acknowledging the problem, I feel that this has trickled into every religion, has trickled into every philosophy. That now, because we lived in a medieval world of condemnation, where people were worms, where people were worthless, where the only thing that mattered was Jesus or God, and everybody had to fall down in defeat and give themselves to him, that people now are on the other side, where it's like, we are amazing and we're capable of everything. And they take credit for stuff they've never done. It's like you say, well, we can go to the moon. And you never done that.
Right.
As humanity, we have. But until they realized that it was very difficult to do it, is they were able to work through it to get there. I feel the same way, that we have to acknowledge our faults, but not dwell in them, and then build up from there and create a network of people who are supportive and create lifestyle changes that are positive to help us achieve those goals. So there's a lot of work to be done before you start thinking about what is the right religion, what's the right philosophy, what's the right path of enlightenment. Because even the Buddha said that all the things that people desired were negative. You never hear that in American Buddhism. You never hear about the Eightfold Path the way that it was originally described, as avoiding selfishness, avoiding physical things like money and pleasure. They never talk about that. They skip that part and they go straight to you becoming one with the universe and going to nirvana. It's like, without understanding that your world attachments is what's holding you down, you're not able to get to the next level.
Interesting. Wow. So wait, what specifically, how does Christian hedonism fit into that?
So I'm not a Christian, but I know a lot of them and I work with a lot of them. And what is popular where I live and around the evangelical world is this idea that God blesses you with money, with a beautiful spouse, a nice car, if you follow him through the person of Jesus. And that's never what the New Testament said, what Jesus said, what the 5 books of Moses. None of that stuff ever says that. There are some hints in ancient religion where those who do good things happen to them, and it's based on a system. It's more like a didactical system where if you behave, positive things happen, or if you plow the land, you get the fruit of your labor. That's a basic system of all different belief systems. But they've created this sense that only people who do well in life, only people who are very successful are in the right path and are being blessed by God, and God has grace over them. Another term for it is the gospel of money, or whatever they call it. Is something related to prosperity, gospel of prosperity. But now it's become this thing where God loves you so much that you must be blessed. And then people who are not blessed, then there's something wrong with them spiritually. So it's just, it's bullying people through religion like they have done through the centuries.
Or is this like mega churches and Joel Osteen, like you mentioned before, right? Is that sort of where we see that most, or?
Yeah, and what's hilarious is that that's what the Israelites were fighting against when they developed monotheism. The Babylonian system was all about the king or the emperor having all the power and all the slaves and everything, because the gods had blessed him, or he was a child of the gods, or he had some type of favor. And Abraham, who was a descendant of the Babylonians, came up with a system that was based on a personal relationship with God that influenced your family and your friends and everybody. And everybody had access to the creator of the universe, instead of having this hierarchical system where only the people who are at the top have the power. So you see the Hebrew prophets always fighting against the kings and against the different leaders because
Right.
they oppressed everyone and made them squirm their presence because they felt that they had the divine right to do that. And now politicians, church leaders, and every person in this country feels empowered in that way, and that somehow someone who's a complete horrible person, just because they are very wealthy and they're very well connected, that somehow God is working through them. And it baffles me that people have fallen into that type of mentality.
Wow. Yeah, this makes me wonder about perversions of religion. Like, it seems like, you mentioned twice here the Americans' version of Buddhism, or maybe the Western version to broaden that, and then America's take on Christianity. What do you think is the most messed up, like, of all the modern manifestations of ancient religions or original religions? I guess it doesn't have to be ancient. What do you think is who's screwed it up the most? Who's twisted it to make something completely different? Do you think it's Christian hedonism, or is there something that most of us aren't even aware about, that they're just getting so wrong from the original doctrines?
Well, the problem is that everything's up for interpretation. I was just talking to I was listening to we had one of our guests was Jonathan Roth. He's professor of Jewish studies in San Jose, California. And we were talking about the Roman army and the different groups that were part of the Roman army. And I was telling him that I find ludicrous they say that Jesus